For more great retail real estate content, like, share, and subscribe. One important term in your lease is your delivery date. The delivery date is the date the landlord intends to be finished with any work that they're doing and is formally handing the space over to you. The delivery date is typically when you'll be able to start your work, so you'll want to know this date so that you can coordinate it with your permitting and GC timeline. One side note here, the delivery date is often different from the rent commencement date, which is the date that you have to start paying rent. Now, because you and your broker did such a good job negotiating your lease, you'll have set this rent commencement date to occur when your build out is complete or as close to that as possible, because you really don't want to pay rent before you're open for business. This is why you need a great lease and a great build out team. Okay, back to the build out. So when the space is delivered to you, it will generally fall into one of the following 4 categories: a cold, dark shell, a warm, lit shell, a vanilla box, or second generation. Let's start with a cold, dark shell. Cold means there's no HVAC in place. Dark means there's no lighting or electrical. There's no plumbing. And sometimes there's no storefront, which can be called windswept. The flooring is unfinished and walls and ceilings are open. Now, you may prefer space in shell condition because there's total flexibility in the way you finish and customize the space. Next is a warm lit shell. Warm means that the HVAC is installed and distributed. That means the machine's in place and the ductwork is there. The storefront has been installed, so it's not open to the elements. Lit means that the electrical and construction lighting are distributed through the space, and plumbing may be stubbed into the space, but it's most likely that there's no restroom built out yet. Now, a warm lit shell has more of the basics in place than a cold dark shell, and it may be really desirable if you still want a high level of customization, but you don't have special HVAC or electrical requirements. This is probably not the case if you're a food service establishment, because you will have very specific HVAC and electrical needs. Next is a vanilla box. In a vanilla box, the HVAC is installed and distributed, the electrical is distributed to wall panels, lighting is installed and functional, and plumbing is run to the space, and the bathrooms are typically built out. Walls and ceilings are finished and ready for paint. Though sometimes the ceiling is still open, but that's not a big deal. The floors are level and they've been finished. Finally, there's a second generation space. Now, second generation spaces have been occupied before, so they may still have the previous tenant's fixtures and finishes, which can be used or demolished and removed. In some cases, a second generation space is a really budget-friendly way to essentially redecorate and start opening for business. But it's not always as simple as it seems, because you really do have to be sure that it's more cost-effective to modify the existing space than it is to just start from scratch. And this is something that you'll be evaluating with your broker. So now that we know all the ways that a space can be delivered to you, for the sake of clarity, let's assume that the landlord is delivering you a cold, dark shell. In this case, your design and construction team is going to do all the planning and work. Now, there may be elements that the landlord will pay for or even do for you. So just because you're taking a cold, dark shell doesn't necessarily mean that you're paying for absolutely everything. As long as you've clearly communicated the landlord's scope of work to your general contractor, they can coordinate this work directly with the landlord's contractors. On that note, I'll mention that big landlords and big buildings will often have a set of construction rules and requirements that you'll need to pass along to your GC as well. Some landlords will want to approve your GC before you even hire them. Some buildings will have requirements about the hours in which construction can and cannot happen. There may be rules about trash, construction vehicles, and more. So be aware of this stuff because you don't want to start off on the wrong foot with your landlord or with your neighbors.